Yes.
We got recordings going. Everything's going. And we got to move relatively swiftly because Miles has to leave.
Yeah.
I'm moving swiftly.
Concise podcast.
I don't believe you.
Yeah, the perils of owning a 55-year-old automobile means you have to take it to the mechanic every once in a while. So I have to pick it up around 4:30.
Yeah. Get a Fox body.
Oh, yeah. Miles, have you considered getting a van?
Actually, yes, a Corvair Greenbrier. So there's the What's Your Problem podcast all in itself.
All right, Max Schnell. Okay, yes. Welcome to Well, There's Your Problem.
Are you doing the screen recording?
Yes, I am doing a screen recording.
Okay, good.
Everything is good. We should be good.
Good.
A podcast about engineering disasters, which is good. Or so the viewers tell us. Listeners, excuse me. I'm Justin Rosniak. I'm the person who's talking right now. My pronouns are he and him. All right, go.
I'm Alice Caldwell-Kelly. My pronouns are she and her. I heard in the comments saying stop interrupting Justin so much, and I resolved to interrupt Justin on the first sentence of the podcast.
So proud of you.
Yes.
So proud of you.
That's what we like is be aggressive towards the viewers. Don't let them get a foothold.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no parasocial relationships, as you're going to see. My name is Liam Anderson. My pronouns are he, him. I'm working on getting a better mic. Okay, shut the fuck up. I'm working on it. I know. We all know. I have to move. I have to do a lot of shit. I promise you, I am the least of your worries. Again, I will come to your house. I will get a crossbow, and I will leg you from 6 feet away. From 6 feet away.
And we have a guest today.
Hi, guest.
Another guest.
Hey, I'm Miles, and my pronouns are he, they.
Ooh, fancy.
I know. Trez fancy.
And today we're going to talk about. You'll see on the screen in front of you a train,
but not just any train.
Not just any train. It's a Cal.
The worst train in the world.
It's a Caltrain.
That can't be true.
It's not the worst train in the world.
It's crazy how they made an entire train out of calcium.
You gotta watch out for that Helvetica scenario.
Low budget drones.
Should we enlighten the users or our listeners rather on the colloquial term for the motive power industries MP36 that is on the screen here?
I didn't know there was a colloquial term for it.
Yes, the crews and some of the people that manufacture it have given it a very good nickname, the dildo liner.
I'm squinting.
Train Horty posting. Welcome to Train Horty posting, baby.
I'm not seeing it personally, but
you have to see a side view.
Okay.
But Miles, you, me, and Liam have all gone out to Strasbourg to see 611.
Oh yes,
that's a dildo liner.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's magnificent. You could fuck a forest with that.
I mean, like, shall we introduce a new term, Freudian wheel slip?
Oh, that's extremely good. Yeah.
There we are.
Do you want a job on a podcast?
I hear I can make multiple dollars being a podcaster.
Yeah, that's true. Literally dozen of dollars.
Damn.
Yes. Do you see the Patreon? It looks big, and then you got to divide it, and it's not so big. All right. So, anyway, today we're going to talk about Caltrain. That stands for California Train. Because it's a train in California. Anyway, but before we tell you why we're going to talk about it, we had to do the goddamn news.
It's another downer, isn't it?
It's another downer, although it's kind of been an upper since then because of the way the Portlanders have been handling this. But yeah, the feds are being deployed around the United States to just, put people in vans and take them away.
Yeah, wearing
not violating any federal law. Not violating any federal law. There's no reason for them to be there. That's what the National Guard is for. We have laws about this.
Don't matter anymore. You can just have a bunch of U.S. Marshals.
It doesn't matter.
U.S. Marshals wearing multicam and subdued patches, just grabbing people up into rental vans. It's cool.
Is Trump just playing Tropico 1, not realizing it is actually the country?
I love Tropico.
Yeah, although it's kind of gone off the rails lately.
If he were playing Tropico, we'd have better infrastructure.
True. Yeah, we don't have DHS agents, but we do have police blimps.
Yeah. So, they've been like just hauling people off in vans for no reason. And then they intimidate them for a while and release them. We don't know if anyone's been disappeared yet. The Portlanders are very mad.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been a crew of dads with leaf blowers just redirecting all the tear gas back into the courthouse out there, which is hilarious.
Last night, like an honest to God, like skirmish line. It was extremely good.
Wow.
Yeah, it was great.
Story that DHS employees are mad that the agency is being used in this way, and I was like, "You're literally like the Thought Police Department created in 2002." As part of the surveillance state. What do you think your fucking job is? It's literally the "Are we the baddies" meme.
Yeah.
I believe their job was to get Bush reelected.
Yeah. Well, the tweet that I saw about this that is profoundly true is that, like, when the Department of Homeland Security was formed, I said that in a matter of years it would be used to have like warrantless paramilitaries disappearing people into vans, and my roommates told me to stop smoking so much pot in the dorm room, and both of us were right.
I mean, a matter of years was pretty generous.
That's true.
I mean, it seemed more like a matter of months. Oh God! All right,
shall we?
Since we got to go quick, so in other news. Everyone's asking us to do an episode. We can't do this episode.
We
don't have enough information.
Guys, it's 3 paragraphs. We can bullshit pretty well. This
not
is
that
3 fucking paragraphs.
Not that well. Yeah, I was about to say. It's not even 3 paragraphs. It's like 5 sentences at most. Yeah. For those of you listening on audio, this is the Erfurt Latrine disaster where a bunch of Holy Roman Empire nerds fell in a latrine when the floor collapsed.
Yeah, extremely funny, but
very funny. Yes,
not enough of a like documented engineering design. We should do a medieval one at some point, but it won't be this. Yeah.
If someone sends me drawings of how the floor was collapsed, I will try and do it.
I feel like one of the things you could do is spend the Patreon money on hiring that weird news place that makes the weird animations really cheaply.
Oh, yeah. Taiwanese place, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like hire them to do a recreation meticulous of the Erfurt latrine disaster, but with like, random contemporary political figures.
Yeah.
Hear me out, though. What if we got Tahir Inshat to do it?
Fuck! Yeah, let's do that.
I want to hang out with Tahir Inshat. That sounds like a good time. much better than hanging out with Elon Musk.
See, the thing is, right? All of these guys would have been safe if they'd had the bed that like encases you when there's an earthquake.
I don't know. Maybe the poo would have seeped in through the bed. I don't know. Is the coffin bed watertight? I don't know.
Probably not.
Anyway,
moving on. All right, that was the goddamn news. We made it quick today.
Good news,
because Miles has to leave at some point. All right, so I have to ask the question. All right, so for those of you who don't live in the Bay Area,
consider yourselves lucky.
What is Caltrain? Yeah, East Coast, Best Coast.
That's right.
All right. So, what is Caltrain?
It's a train in California. The clue is in the name.
Yes.
You did.
Should I describe it in a overly official tone?
Please.
If you want to, sure.
Caltrain, for over 100 years, has been an integral commuter service connecting San Francisco with San Jose, eventually extending south to Gilroy.
Oh, that's a fantastic commercial voice.
Great voice.
Thank you.
Yes. It's a commuter train. Sort of, it runs between, as Miles said, San Francisco, San Jose. They run a bunch of trains every day. It goes through, of course, some of the wealthiest parts of the United States. That's this whole area here. It's like Palo Alto. That's like San Mateo. That's like all these horrible places where all the techies live.
Which leads me to a question, which I feel like we're going to spend the next hour or so answering. Why then do we have all of these, to me, very beautiful F-40s on the right here? But why aren't they fucking like some Elon Musk curved hexagonal bullshit?
Have I got an answer for you? It's because Caltrans, the California Department of Transportation, is cheap. And also because they're oddly good at maintaining these F40s, so they keep on keeping on.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Really.
So now Caltrain, like a lot of other transit authorities, ridership's around 10% of usual, which in Caltrain, which is a system that depends on fare revenue, is a big problem, right? Caltrain receives over 70% of its funding from fare box revenue, right? That's just, tickets, right? So it's sort of an existential crisis because we got Doroni going around.
Mm-hmm.
And one question is, why do we talk about Caltrain in particular, right? Especially when elsewhere in the Bay Area and San Francisco, the San Francisco Municipal Railway, which is, of course, the transit authority out there, has had to cut 50% of bus routes. And there's lots of cuts to transit everywhere in the United States right now.
Why should people be able to get to work?
Yeah, exactly, right?
Well, there's fewer people working, so you need fewer ways of getting to work. It's simple. That's just math.
Oh, yes.
I love to walk another,
3.5
half a mile
miles
to and from my bus every day, yeah.
Uphill both ways. Because remember that San Francisco is not flat.
San Francisco.
San Francisco's non-Euclidean,
Yeah,
yes.
it definitely is non-Euclidean.
So, all right, so Muni's running half their bus routes right now, and they're thinking about doing that permanently, right? Just because they have no way to raise revenue. Caltrain is in a similar situation, right, where they have almost no revenue, and they had this idea they were going to put a 1/8 cents sales tax on the ballot in November, right?
Because they have to
continue to fund their operation, and because they can based on their charter.
That seems reasonable to me. I assume I'm going to be pissed off about something.
Unfortunately, we run into California's insane tax amendment where you have to have ballot initiatives to raise taxes on almost anything, right?
That's true. And in addition, bridge tolls as well.
Oh my God.
The other thing is that the Bay Area in particular is very trigger happy with raising the cost of those types of things. If you look at the disparity in the percentage of sales tax between counties alone in the Bay Area itself, it's pretty wild.
So one of the members of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, I think several of them, just decided we're not going to put this measure on the ballot, right?
Democracy.
We're just not going to do it. Yes.
Hooray!
And there's this sort of faux progressive argument from equality here, right? Obviously, a sales tax is a regressive tax, right? Because it applies equally to everyone. And a lot of that sales tax would come from San Francisco. Most San Franciscans do not ride Caltrain. That's people from the suburbs coming in, right? And at least one of the Board of Supervisors, Shaman Walton, who is also on the Joint Powers Board that oversees Caltrain, wants more San Francisco representation on the board before he would even let voters vote on the sales tax, right?
That's none of his goddamn business.
Also, aren't there now 4 people living in San Francisco, all of whom are billionaires?
One of the things that I've had as a sort of joke for a long time is because San Francisco is so expensive, it's like the Truman Show where at 6 p.m. everybody leaves the entire city and it's completely empty.
I too have been to Wilmington, Delaware.
Yeah.
I mean, the vibe I got of people who actually live in San Francisco is that it's one gay bookstore that's been open since the mid 70s that is slowly being forced out in a vice, and then 6 guys who got rich finding a way to slightly evade some more capital gains tax,
more or less. And then you throw in a pretty diverse population and you've pretty much got it.
It's like Yogi Berra says, nobody goes there anymore. It's too crowded.
Exactly.
Now, one of the things that inspired me to say we should do an episode about this was a bad tweet.
Yes.
Which I'm not going to mention who it was, or because I think the person has suffered enough by now. But they specifically stated Caltrain's high fares made it a super highway for Silicon Valley, which was specifically designed to keep, poor and black and brown riders off the trains,
What?
right?
Right.
Now,
Okay.
so first
All
off,
right. That's okay.
Route 101 is the super highway for Silicon Valley,
That is
right?
Do they have all of
Well,
those
well,
buses? Where they they pay the people driving them almost nothing, and then they have to sleep in the buses in between shifts, and they use the regular San Francisco bus stops, but they don't pay for them or anything.
Yeah, that's correct. The infamous Google buses, as they've come to be known, they have had a positive impact in reducing overall traffic. But when push comes to shove, San Franciscans get grumpy about nearly everything. So even something that could be on paper be seen as a good thing from a transit perspective was actually literally picket lined more than once, which is pretty hilarious.
I like it.
Yeah.
But all the really, really rich techies, they're not taking Caltrain. They're putting on autopilot on their Teslas,
Yep.
and just snoozing on the way into work until I crash into a semi truck. Which I believe 50% of autopilot trips end in.
Oof.
Second off, just because, lots of middle class and upper middle class people ride the train doesn't mean it's exclusively a train for rich people, right?
Exactly.
We have Excella.
Yeah. You don't have to be a dirt farmer to be, poor, right? A lot of people can swing $5 to ride the train in from zone 2 each day, but, still struggle, right?
Yeah. The San Francisco poverty line actual numbers are something insane. It's $88,000 for a single person is the poverty line in San Francisco.
Jesus.
Ooh,
Fuck that, man.
Right?
That's a lot of money.
Just
Yeah.
move to Delaware. Goddamn.
And that's the thing. So if you think about this, so your average Muni bus driver gets paid about $55,000 a year, last I checked. Yeah, so it doesn't matter how many years you've served in Muni. Of course, you get paid a little more each year, but at the end, you're probably still beneath the poverty line.
I was about to say, you got to live out in Stockton or some bullshit way out in the boonies.
Sadly, yes, or you have to. Yeah, exactly. It's not a good idea. You have all this weird super commuting from far off unknown locations like Tracy.
So, I kind of wanted to do this episode because I've been a commuter rail rider basically my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And especially if you're commuting in the off-peak hours, not everyone on the trains is a button-down middle management guy or anything like that, right?
Exactly.
But there is a sort of kernel of truth to the idea that commuter rail is, for the middle class and higher, right? The fares are high compared to other modes of public transportation. In our case, this particular train runs through very privileged towns and cities. More than half the ridership makes over the median area income, and a lot of people who ride the train are white, right? There's a class character to the train, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, side note, the median income of that strip along the peninsula is $120,000 a person.
Jesus.
Yeah.
I hate to criticize trains, but we are doing ruthless critique of all that exists. And so...
Yes. So one of the things is this sort of thing is reflected in commuter trains all across America, right? How did this come about? And sort of to explain the current conditions, we're going to have to talk about some of the history of commuter rail in the United States, some of the history of Caltrain, how Caltrain and other commuter railroads operate, and why those operations basically require high fares. And we'll talk a little bit about California housing policy.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes.
That's where if we had the Wilhelm scream drop, I'd put it in right there.
What was that?
What the hell was that?
That was me screaming.
What? Screaming into what? An air conditioner?
A toaster?
I was about to say.
Fuck you. No friends.
So
fantastic.
I put in the dogs playing poker here. This particular dogs playing poker is 4 aces and his stop to represent the previous luxury of commuter trains in the United States.
Oh, that's great.
I like the big ass watermark from paintinghere.com.
Yeah,
the intellectual property law respecters.
Yes. So now, one of the things we say on this podcast a lot is train good, right?
Ah, yes, the rallying cry of numb tots.
Yes. So now, train usually good, especially in a modern context, but train not always good, right?
Very much no.
Train can sometimes be bad. Infrastructure is sort of neutral, right? Depending on who's doing the infrastructure, what they're doing it for.
Well, thinking about like Cecil Rhodes is like train from what is it?
Cape to Cairo.
Yeah, Cape to Cairo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, the whole Holocaust thing that was bad.
Yeah. Also not good.
A little bit.
Yeah. Yes. So like we use trains for Western expansion, right? It's good to have better transportation, obviously, right? But it's bad that we're stealing ass loads of land to do it, And you can see here, these are land grants given to railroads.
These would be the ass loads of land.
Yes.
So,
for instance, the red central arrow is the Central Pacific / Union Pacific, which is the famous transcontinental. If we look at the tip of the arrow that Justin has drawn, there's the Bay Area, of course. And about halfway through in the middle of Utah is Promontory, where the split is. Now, these wide swaths you see on the map are actually quite accurate. They can be dozens or hundreds of miles wide in some cases. I mean, even though it is a bunch of individual land grants, look at poor Iowa, for instance, which has one every 10 miles. It's absolutely ludicrous.
I was under the understanding that this map was a little bit exaggerated in that not all of this land was actually granted to railroads, but this was the potential land grants.
There are some, yeah. If you look at the South, the Atlantic and Pacific, for instance, which is the second lowest one there, and with little X's out of it. Yeah.
Right here?
Yeah, they tried laying it, and they were like, oops.
Can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I'm personally insulted. Right over here, Pennsylvania and Jersey and Delaware are all the same
state now.
And,
there's no New England anymore.
Oh my God!
I'd love to live in the Commonwealth of Tri-State area.
This might be the only map that actually has the Upper Peninsula of Michigan drawn in, but not Maine.
Look, we've given it to New Brunswick. It's owned by the Irvings now. All right. So yeah, we used railroads to access and then, sort of obtain land owned by Native Americans, right? And, we sort of murdered them in order to get their land. And, Canadian National had a whole class of passenger cars specifically called colonizer cars for bringing people out west as cheap as possible. Christ. So they could, stake a claim to lands that people already lived on.
Oh, we had that too. The Central Pacific had, and the Union Pacific had cars that were second-class cars that were just for that as well.
Wow.
I'll see if I can dig up an image if you want to put it in the thing officially when this is done.
And you get a lot of like romantic notions about like taming the West and like manifest destiny and things of that nature because you have this superior technology of railroads.
Right, and it didn't end with the rootin' tootin' cowboy era either, as we see in the images now. A complete legacy of being extremely racist and, in some cases, not even precise. The picture in the back shows what you'll soon learn to be a Southern Pacific commuter coach, loading Japanese folks being interned all along the West Coast to be sent to places like Manzanar. But their first stop being through Tanforan, a horse racetrack, or Santa Anita down south in the Pacific Electric picture on the right there, where they were unfortunately and horrifyingly kept in stables until they were quote unquote sorted out and then shipped off to Manzanar.
Even our beloved interurbans were used for bad stuff, as it turns out.
Yeah. And it wasn't just during World War II. In 1933, in the depths of the Depression, there was a decision that came out to deport people believed to be quote unquote Mexican, so a large Latinx population all throughout California was forcibly deported. The numbers range, but the average seems to be about 1.3 million. And it wasn't just the quote unquote illegals you hear about now. They were also naturalized, natural born U.S. citizens thrown over the border.
Is that the operation I'm thinking of with the extremely racist name?
No, that's
Operation
actually a
W word.
Yeah, that's a follow-up that happened in 1953. This is a lesser known but oddly larger operation that happened in 33.
Oh, okay.
We always got to conceal the worst things America did.
Mhm.
Can't learn about American war crimes. Can't try to make your country better. Can't learn from the past. Nope. America number one. Goddamn stupid.
Cannot learn from mistakes ever.
So you can do trains to do internment, ethnic cleansing. You can of course do trains for extermination.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah, not so good.
Yeah, Deutsche Bahn really does not like you mentioning this at all.
I don't know. I once went into a Hugo Boss store and asked where they kept the SS uniforms, and I was promptly banned from all Hugo Boss stores.
This exhibit is closed.
This is actually a big controversy back when VRE switched operators from Amtrak to Cialis, which is the American division of the French SNCF National Railroad Company, where a certain group in the area, one of the Jewish groups in the area was like demanding Cialis disclose its role in the Holocaust. Because, of course, Vichy SNCF did, in fact, deport Jews to Poland and other bad places.
If you want the closest thing to something that will make you feel better from this, it's the only time that a Holocaust train was actually stopped was an attack by the Belgian resistance, I believe. And literally it was just two guys, one of whom with a lamp and the other one with a gun, but with the sort of like improvised cooperation of the Belgian driver who was just like, yeah, I'm just going to run this as slow as I can without the Germans shooting me so that people can jump off it.
That's great.
Thank you, Belgium, for once.
Thank you, Belgium. Sorry for insulting you in the beer episode, which I'm still working on, I swear.
The beer, still dog shit.
Yeah, the beer is still bad. So, you can use trains to do racism, of course. Trains used to be segregated. In the South, but also you could sort of like catch a train in the North that was heading to the South and get a little bit of segregation in the North if you really wanted.
As a treat.
As a treat, yeah. There's always that one incredibly well-restored Jim Crow car in every railroad museum in the South, sponsored by the Daughters of the Confederacy or something like that.
There's thankfully a nice epilogue to that as well. Yes, there definitely are those, but they decided to put one in the beautiful new museum in DC as well. I stumbled across it while researching it, and I came across this picture of a huge Pullman heavyweight car flying into the museum on a crane.
That's the National African American History Museum, right?
Yes.
Oh, that's cool.
It's nice to have one of them preserved by folks who aren't white supremacists for once.
Clearly the lowest of bars, yeah.
Yeah, it's nice to have some control over that narrative now to actually tell the real story as well.
Yeah, and the other thing is, of course, even minus institutionalized racism, you can have fallout from infrastructure, which is not good, right? So I would give the example of the Washington, D.C. Green Line, right?
Oh, boy.
So they started building this through largely black neighborhoods right after some major race riots, right? And they ran through commercial corridors, which, were pretty well wrecked by race riots. And then the streets were shut down for like 10 years to build the tunnels underneath them, right? And then when the Green Line opened, the yuppies started to swarm in, places like Columbia Heights, U Street, even Shaw at this point, so you had complete turnover of the population and just absurd gentrification from putting in the Green Line. I think the only pre-Green Line and pre-race riots business still open on U Street is Ben's Chili Bowl,
which is going to close anyway.
And then, and then further down south, like when they built the Green Line, a lot of direct buses from Anacostia, which was a poor neighborhood in Washington, D.C. for a long time. A lot of those buses were canceled. The idea being now you transfer from the bus to the Green Line, but the trains were more expensive than the buses. So, it forced the poorest people to take the expensive train as opposed to the cheap bus to where they were going, right? So even if you're like building good infrastructure, like sometimes it can exacerbate inequalities and make life miserable for people, right? And, part of this is like if you give a poor neighborhood nice things, like public transit, bike lanes, parks, trails, fix up the sidewalks even, rich people start to move in and kick out the poor people, right? And this is like difficult to square the circle under a capitalist economic system, right?
So long as you have property developers who are willing to like make lofts to take advantage, then it's going to be very easy for that to happen.
It's difficult to build cheap housing in a desirable area. Yeah. This is why like urbanists, I always think have like half the picture. Like, yeah, sure, we need more housing, but like it matters who controls the housing. It matters how much the housing costs.
Correct.
Yeah. You can't just build luxury housing in the most desirable locations.
Otherwise, you just do redlining and white flight, but again in the opposite direction. You just like change ends like a soccer game, and so you just force people out into suburbs while the richer, whiter people will just move into the cities again.
Oh yeah, wasn't that the Obama era in a nutshell?
Yeah,
you can buy a house with this like collateralized insecure mortgage out in the suburbs, and it will be the American dream until it's foreclosed out from under you.
Right.
And likewise, we can't just bring good infrastructure to poor people and expect the poor people to be able to take advantage of it before they're kicked out. This is like a problem with capitalism, right? This is why people don't like getting nice things sometimes. Because it's like, wow, this nice thing might make my neighborhood too nice and I won't be able to live here anymore.
Well, that's
plus you have the sorry, go ahead.
One of you go ahead, please.
Right, so I've seen the take that like we want things to improve our community, but it'll change. We can't have more dense housing because that'll change the fabric of the neighborhood, which is this sort of bullshit take. But like at the same time, like I guess I get getting frustrated, but that's again symptomatic of capitalism, not just putting infrastructure down.
Yeah. The other thing I'd point out is that like another reason to be kind of suspicious of particularly like mass transit infrastructure is it has a way of like growing cops on it, particularly if you have an infrastructure
railroad cops.
Yeah, that like
railroad bulls
that like needs fare revenue to operate. Then you have a lot of cops there to enforce fares. And obviously that's not great, particularly if you're the kind of person who does not do well in interactions with cops, like, for instance, black people.
Yeah, it just reminds me of that MTA thing about they're hiring $250 million worth of cops to stop $250 million worth of fare evasion.
Yeah, efficiency.
So fucking pointless.
Yeah.
Also, the form of efficiency that takes is that buys like 4 cops worth of overtime.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, on the other hand, of course, highways, just demolish your house and throw you on the street.
And give you a whole other system of cops.
Yes.
The CHP. In California, at least.
Mm-hmm.
It's impossible to say whether it's good or not. So, next set of slides is where we discuss the various types of mass transit. Heavy rail mass transit, I mean. Right? So, started this with the idea we're going to talk about what is commuter rail, right? Is a commuter train just a train that goes to the suburbs?
Yeah, it's a hot dog, a sandwich.
Yes, exactly. That's the question we're going to answer here. So like, is the New York City subway commuter rail? Is San Francisco BART commuter rail? Is the Chicago Blue Line commuter rail? Is Amtrak commuter rail? So I thought we'd go through the spectrum of trains.
Okay. Yeah.
Seems sensible. Let's do it.
Hit me with the genders of train.
The various genders of trains, right? There's more than 2. There's at least 3. Forget everything you think about trains in general. The train's a box that moves people along a fixed path, costs money to run, but makes money when it has passengers in it, right?
We hope.
So one end of the spectrum, you have the subway, right? It runs frequently all day. It has dedicated tracks. I've never seen a freight train on the subway, right?
Yeah, you have that one maintenance train that goes around that they fill up with the garbage, like that bottle on the platform there. Like,
yeah, and sometimes you get the money train.
Yeah,
That's
the money
always fun
train
to see.
when set the police are just pointing MP5s at you, and you're nearly blackout drunk, and you're just like, man, I just want to go home. Like,
the stations are close together. Most of the subway equipment, and by equipment I mean trains, they're making money most of the day, i.e. they're carrying passengers, right? So the more time your equipment is making money, the lower your fares can be, right? Because they're making money for most of the day. So, and your subway network usually covers a small area, right? So your subways are like in New York City, Chicago, Philadelphia, London, Paris, Berlin, Moscow, that sort of system, right?
Like, can be underground, doesn't always have to be. The London Overground is like meaningfully the same as this.
Actually, the London Overground is the next slide.
Oh, shit. Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
Disregard that. Yeah, I'm great at this.
Okay, so your next step on the spectrum.
Next gender.
Yeah, the next gender is what we might call, in the United States, we call it rapid rail. In Germany, you have the S-Bahn, right? And I guess in London, you'd call it the Overground, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
So
I guess. I'm saying like I know. In the time between the last slide and this one, I have acquired a comprehensive knowledge.
So this is like, usually these systems are a little lower frequency than the subway, but they still usually run at least every 15 minutes or so, right? The stations are further apart. They cover a much wider area than the subway, except like the London Piccadilly line that just goes way out in the boondocks to get to Heathrow. Yeah.
Is the high speed line on here? Do we count the high speed line, or is it some level of freak show?
The high speed line is the hunted is a freak show. Yes,
I love that. I love that trade, man. Love to get way out to the suburbs in like 12 fucking minutes, and then take a bus all the way, and then listen to the racist white people tell me why they can't possibly have better service in their area because the black people who work there, I don't know, will after their shift at the Gap at the King of Prussia Mall come to your stupid house in Ardmore or whatever and smash all your windows and take your TV, which is totally fucking realistic.
And then bring it back on the train.
Yeah, every cashier on the Gap is in MS-13.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Don't tell the Cheeto in the White House that.
The M at MS-13 stands for I work at the Gap. Yes. Yeah. So your rapid rail system, like the stations are farther apart, the whole network covers a wider area, still usually uses dedicated tracks, no freight trains, right? Still, most of the trains are carrying passengers for most of the day, right? And your fares are usually low. They're still distance-based a lot of the time. Like BART in San Francisco has distance-based fares. They're not flat. Sometimes these are like multipolar systems, so they might serve 2 or more metropolitan areas. So if you're looking at examples in the United States, definitely BART, definitely the Washington Metro, any German S-Bahn system, the London Overground. If you want to learn more about the American ones, go to Big Mood Energy's YouTube channel. It's her video on metros. It's very good. It's very United States centric, of course, as is sort of this podcast. So,
Amerocentrism.
Yes. So as we continue down the spectrum, we get to where it starts to get funky, right? Which is regional rail.
Oh boy.
Okay, which we talked about in episode 3 of this podcast way back in the day. So sort of covers the same area as an S-Bahn, but less frequent, right? There's trains every hour or less on the off-peak, but more trains during rush hour, right? because there's more trains during rush hour than there are on the off-peak, that means you need a lot of trains to run service, but most of them are idle for most of the day, right? And you still need to have a lot of crews to run those trains, but most of those crews are idle for most of the day.
Yes, do nothing union jobs, baby.
Yes.
The classic.
No, it's always good. But, I like to be paid to do nothing too. That's why I'm a podcaster. But
we work hard, goddamn you.
Paid nothing to do nothing?
That's the dream. That's the dream. I worked a job like that. Best goddamn job I ever had, man. I just stapled shit for like 7 months and fucking ruled.
Well, this means that your fares have to be higher to cover for all the trains and crews sitting there doing nothing for most of the day, right? So these are, a lot of these regional rail systems, again, they serve multiple metro areas. Sometimes they share tracks with freight railroads, which limits service flexibility. Some of your examples, Caltrain, which we're talking about today, Scepter Regional Rail, some of New Jersey Transit. If you go to Europe, anything that's marked in interregio service is basically the same thing, except that covers a whole continent as opposed to one metro area, which we're a long way off from that here in the States.
We can only hope.
One day, Bernie can still win. Here's how. So now let's talk about the bad stuff.
All of it.
Yes, the classic.
Commuter rail. All right. Here's where it gets bad. You have, in commuter rail systems, this is the Virginia Railway Express. I used to take this train in high school. You have very peaky service, right? So you will have no service in the middle of the day. A lot of times no service on weekends. A lot of times no service on holidays. And a lot of times service is almost all in the rush hour direction, inbound to downtown in the morning, outbound in the evening, right? So, and it caters to folks working downtown and they're working bankers hours, right? 9 to 5, right? And they almost always share tracks with freight trains, which results in bizarre operational practices. And I'll explain using what I'm most familiar with, the Virginia Railway Express. All right. You get really bad equipment utilization. Here's the rail yard at Broad Run, right? Which is at the end of the Manassas line here, which I used to take into high school every day, right?
Right next to Performance Dogs.
Yes.
For our podcast viewers, we're looking at a satellite image of a small tin shed with a 6-track yard out in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by trees and a scrapyard.
Yes.
And Performance Dogs.
Where Mike Vick absolutely had it out.
Oh, God. It's temporarily closed, unfortunately. So you see in this yard 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 trains, right? And if we look at the schedule, Manassas line northbound in the morning, you will see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 trains. Leave this yard, go to Union Station in Washington, D.C., and then they sit there the whole day in the yard. And then in the evening, take my word for it, they come back.
Usually.
Yeah, usually. Oh, they've had some problems recently. They can barely even make this schedule now. So, this is a major problem with commuter rail, where they don't use equipment very effectively. That's a lot of time because freight railroads limit the amount of moves they can make. In this case, for the VRE, there's something called the Long Bridge, which goes over the Potomac River, where CSX says you can only have 40 train movements per day or you will die.
What? Just nationalize it. Just nationalize it. Just start pushing all the CSX shit over into the river. I don't fucking care. You're the government.
Just like the Hueys evacuating from Saigon.
Yes. You could just say, hi, we're the government and we're here to take this bridge. And when CSX protests, you kneel down their CEO at dawn and shoot him over the bridge. There you go. Done.
When you say shoot him over the bridge, I picture in like a trebuchet.
Somehow I imagined many furloughed CSX employees would enjoy this plan.
They're building a $2 billion bridge over the Potomac adjacent to the existing bridge in order to run like 10 more trains a day across.
Oh my God.
Sweet.
It's going to take 10 years to do it. It's bizarre.
Efficiency.
But you can see like commuter rail sometimes highly inefficient equipment wise, right?
You're just storing, you're just like using up 6 lines of track for all day for a train that goes nowhere.
Yeah. Well, it goes somewhere. It just goes somewhere at specific times of day.
Exactly.
This is like Transport Fever bad.
Ooh.
No, Transport Fever has much better equipment utilization.
we have to stop the podcast because one of my thousands of mods that I've installed just breaks and like crashes to desktop.
When the train gets to the end of the line, it turns around, as opposed to here, where when the train gets to the end of the line, it goes in the yard and takes a nap for 8 hours.
Exactly. Yeah, the Big Mood Railroad.
Yeah, and the other thing is, like, this isn't even the worst that's going on in the area, because up here at Union Station, the VRE trains at least go into a yard. MARC, which is the Maryland commuter trains, they just go onto platforms at Union Station, and they use the platform as a yard.
Ugh.
Wow.
We just park my train here.
I mean, that's what Caltrain does as well. And during the middle of the day, if you look at 4th and Townsend in San Francisco, it's just chock-a-block with Caltrain consists and a few leaving every so often.
Oh, yeah. There's like 12, 14 tracks there, and a train that leaves every 30 minutes, and a train that comes in every 30 minutes, right?
Yep.
You know, a lot of these huge stations, like Grand Central has 100 and something tracks. It's a glorified train yard at the end of the day. But you can sort of see here, like, having 6 trains to make 6 runs a day, not very efficient, right? And you got to hire 6 crews for this, and that's why this is sort of why fares have to be really high for this form of public transportation. And a lot of times these are like really balkanized systems. You know, DC has 2 commuter railroads, New York City has 3 commuter railroads, the Bay Area
has at least 5.
Is a disaster show.
Yeah.
I mean, especially when you consider that there's 1 million transit agencies just in general. Yeah.
London's like at least 2 train operating companies, like Southeastern and Southern, and then probably another couple that I can't think of.
Bring back Network Southeast.
Yes.
The
God,
trains
yes.
look
Give
so
me
good.
the toothpaste delivery.
They look so good. But yeah, and sometimes these systems don't work together very good. Now that we know a little bit about how commuter rail works in America today, we're going to go to the history of Caltrain.
We're going to go back in time to a picture that I myself took, my only Wikipedia contribution. All right. So
that means we don't have to credit this one. Thank God.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So let's talk about Caltrain history. Since the 1860s, more or less, they've been running passenger trains up and down the peninsula. But the show really started going with Southern Pacific President Edward H. Harriman, who designed a 4-track main line to go between San Francisco and San Jose. He only ended up laying half of that, but all the tunnels and bridges are built for that capacity to eventually be used or not. There's bridge abutments and in some cases extant bridges which were built and don't have any tracks on them and never had since 1907. So the whole idea of Caltrain also is a bit of a real estate scheme. You want to drive obvious people paying passengers along your line, so you sell land along your line so you can develop towns and cities along your line to hopefully get passenger and also freight hauled over your railroad. So starting in the turn of the century, they started running pretty regular trains, and obviously it was all behind steam locomotives like the one you see, this beautiful P8 class Pacific. And they had ordered what are also known as Harriman cars. And the deal with these cars is that they were a unique development of Pullman cars. They were lighter weight. They could handle quite a few passengers. They were excellently designed and durable. And they ordered a ton of them in 1923 to supplant the earlier equipment. And by 1925, they were operating on just 10-minute schedules with 10-minute headways between San Jose and San Francisco, which is excellent. I could only hope to have that.
Which is better than they do now.
Yes.
Yeah, with steam. That's insane.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, and most of the commute, the majority of the years that they had dedicated commute engines. And why do I say commute? Because there's no goddamn R. There's no R.
It's
Commute.
Absolutely peninsula
no
commute.
R.
Yeah.
Okay.
No R.
They are Southern Pacific's commutes. They are not a commuter train.
This is worse than the time that I found out that the word restaurateur doesn't have an N.
Ew. Ooh.
Yeah,
right. Anyways, so typical locomotive passenger power were 460 10-wheelers, very well loved by the crews, and the 462 Pacific you see here. They held down assignments until the early 50s, when they started to retire some of the other larger locomotives after World War II, and eventually bumped the smaller 10-wheelers and in some cases even the Pacifics out of commute service. They got supplanted by gargantuan engines like 484 Northerns, like the GS4, for instance, and MT4 Mountains and other big, powerful steam, TM. This was also an integral part of how a lot of Southern Pacific steam got saved, because the SP commute line in particular was the last bastion of Southern Pacific steam in the entire 4,000-mile network. Because, the SP's headquarters was down the street, and lo and behold, they were steam fans, even if their accountants weren't. The last steam-powered commute ran in January of 1957.
That's pretty good. And I mean, some romance there for steam likers. Where's that fucking train simulator DLC, man?
Right? Norfolk and Western kept running them until 1960. Ooh.
And if we go to
a brag match.
Yes.
Let's go to the next slide and
Virginia
take a look
boys.
at 4449.
I was about to say, assigned to the commute.
Oh yeah, buddy.
Just
Yes.
You see why Ayn Rand develops a whole insane ideology around this.
Yeah.
you look at this and you're just like, I mean, talk about the dildo liner, right? That is an obscene train.
Oh yeah.
Although 4449 didn't look as beautiful as this when she was in commute service. All the skirting on the side, the orange bit, was scrapped in the mid-40s to support the war effort, because clearly they needed 5 pieces of steel to make a few things.
Did we win the war? Did we win the war, Miles? Did we win the war, Miles?
I don't know. Looking at 2020 from 1945,
scoreboard, baby, scoreboard.
I'm sorry. While you two are arguing, I'm still just looking at this train, just
it's so
Ain't she a
orange.
beaut?
It's so orange. They should just paint all locomotives like this, and Operation Lifesaver wouldn't have to do anything. Because at some point,
Exactly.
you're gonna see the big dumb orange train, and if you get hit by it, that's absolutely your fucking fault.
You're going to stop your car so you can watch it go by.
Right as it crushes you to death.
Well, no, you'd stop it before the
before
intersection,
you get turned into
before the
pasta.
railroad crossing. Yeah, exactly.
It just crushes your car.
Yeah, train
All right, so now
good,
to
car
talk-
bad.
So behind these beautiful locomotives were the passenger cars, and they had 3 distinct eras of passenger cars. So before the in the turn of the century, they had Harriman coaches, which are 60-foot long cars that seated about 80 people in relative luxury. They were painted a dark olive green. They had pretty nice ventilation and operable windows. The crews loved them, and they survived until 1967. The one on the screen now is a 72-foot suburban coach, also a Harriman design. Those were built in 1923 by Pullman, and these lasted until 1985. It lasted into the Caltrain era. There is a photograph of an There's a photograph of a brand new F40 pulling a 1923 Harriman car. And if that isn't peak transit...
Once again,
I don't know, the MP54s lasted longer.
Once again, I'm just doing a disaster podcast. It's so nice to just even appreciating the many problems and failures of Caltrain, to appreciate some nice trains, you know?
Yeah.
Not have to look at people in a pool of their own vomit and blood and excrement. Yeah. I mean, to be fair, normally I do piss and shit and vomit on my commute home, but that unrelated reasons.
So let's go to the next slide and take a look inside these beautiful cars. Now, here's how they looked in the later years. Before, they had a nicer upholstery job than the primary blue that you see here, but you can see that they're beautiful, well-maintained cars, and they were that way until the end. They didn't go through a destitute period or anything because
lovely high ceilings.
Oh yes,
I like the light fixtures; those are nice.
Oh, the light fixtures are absolutely gorgeous.
Oh, do they have the flippy seats? Oh, flippy chairs.
They are flippy.
Yeah, flippy seats. Love me some flippy seats.
Fantastic design. And then in the early 1950s, Pullman came to them again and wanted to order something they were developing called gallery cars. And
yes,
classic bi-level gallery cars. But why is it called a gallery car? It's because it has a big hole in the center of the car.
Yes, the prophesized train glory hole. Go on, Miles.
Yes. So the glory hole, if you will, is so the conductor can punch tickets from the ground floor and the second deck without having to go upstairs, which also avoids a very Scooby-Doo style fare evasion scenario where they're running up and down the stairs.
I like the idea of just like rolling under the flippy seats, turning it around, and be like, "No, I've been here the whole time." See?
Yeah, exactly. The Pullman standard cars were also used by the Chicago Northwestern in Chicago, and I think a few other operations spread around. And then the ones that you see on like the VRE, for instance, are second and third hand from these orders.
Yes, I took a 60-year-old gallery car into high school each day. It was pretty hilarious.
Yeah, they're neat cars. A few of them were stripped and gutted and then built into basically party cars for the ill-fated Francisco tours, arguably one of the ugliest paint schemes to ever grace a locomotive and train set, for an ill-fated 1984 Reno Fun Train.
Oh boy, I gotta see
that. Sound fun at all.
Francisco tours, you say?
Yeah, there's definitely a Well, There's Your Problem podcast about
Didn't they take some apart from the Marlboro train too?
Oh my god!
Oh yeah, bud.
Oh. I don't like that at all.
Train no longer good.
In the meantime, let's take a look on the interior of a gallery car so you can see what's going on here.
Yes.
This is in the later Japanese-built gallery cars that superseded the Pullman standard. But you can see that you can punch tickets from the first floor. It's roomy.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a cross-section so everyone knows what's going on here. All right.
There it is.
Have on the top level, there is a seat here. On this side,
you're just drawing Iron Man now.
Here, right? And then there's a railing. And then down here, there are two seats, and there are two seats, right? Now, in the middle of the car, right past this doorway, this is the middle of the car, right? And there's two little spiral staircases here, so you can get up to the second row of seats up here. And then on the other side of this part over here, it's the same thing, but backwards, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a gallery car. Now, one of the funny things is when I rode the VRE, after they switched from Amtrak Cruise to Cialis French Cruise, they decided that rather than do the one pass-through and check tickets from people above and below, they would instead go up every aisle in the car individually.
So you could do the Scooby-Doo thing.
It was a concession to American slapstick.
Yeah,
it just now took 4 times as long to check tickets on every car for no reason.
That's VRE, baby. That's VRE, baby.
Yeah.
Buster Keaton is the conductor.
Before you move on, I have posted the Francisco Tours livery in the Discord chat for you, Justin. It's real.
It's gruesome. This is that Montreal Expo sheet. Oh boy, Ghost Bones, baby. This is horrible.
It honestly doesn't get any worse than this, guys. Like this is its own disaster.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I've always wanted to ride around in the flag of Norway.
It's like it's the palace of the flag of Norway applied to the flag of South Africa.
It is. Oh God, I love it so much. I wish I didn't, but I love it so much.
All right, so steam was vanquished in 1957.
Bastards.
But there was what was known as a transition period. Because steam wasn't going to last forever. And Fairbanks Morse was about to kick off the Horsepower Wars.
Sunday.
And just think, a decade before American muscle cars started doing the same thing. So most EMDs and Alcos of the immediate post-war period were like bragging with their belt buckles about having 1,500 or 1,700 horsepower. And then Fairbanks Morse enters the scene and body slams them with a 2,400 horsepower monster known as the Trainmaster.
That rules.
Yes.
The Trainmaster.
In the most appropriate use of this meme, this absolute unit was... I couldn't resist when I was like, wait a minute. Here we go. Okay. This absolute unit was powered by an opposed piston World War II submarine engine.
Oh,
which
like
is
a
pretty
Delphic.
Neat.
Awesome. Yes.
Yeah, very much so.
I love putting marine engines in trains. It's the best thing that you can do.
Marine engines and everything. Absolutely.
Yeah, I want one in my fucking cell phone. I want to be able to pick up my iPhone and just hit.
You start using a higher power app, and you hear the revs start to increase.
Oh, this is a not
have too many.
Oh my god! So, a side note on that. There's a long storied history of tugboat and marine applications using locomotive prime movers. In this case, it's the reverse, which is kind of cool because, like, EMD often and Alco often used their prime movers in tugboats and other marine craft, which were specifically designed for locomotives. Anyways, so they came on the scene with this 2,400 horsepower Trainmaster. The SP tried it out, immediately loved it, bought one of the largest fleets of any of them, and promptly realized that, well, with all this horsepower to spare, it gives you kick-ass acceleration. So you're able to keep what used to be the steam schedule between all these stations. They tried out other locomotives. They tried EMD SD7s and 9s when they realized their gearing was too sluggish. They just couldn't get off the line well. And eventually they supplanted the rest of the fleet with GP9s, known as torpedo boats, because they have the large air tanks on the roof that kind of make them look like, PT-109. Insert JFK reference here.
Well, it's at least hard to do it. No, that's a different Kennedy. Moving on. I was going to do a joke, but you gotta, it's hard to toss a girl overboard, when you can only go straight sort of deal.
There hasn't been a Kennedy train disaster. Every other form of transit, car,
there has. Yes, there has.
There has.
Yeah, and
all right. So the Bobby Kennedy funeral train. Yeah,
that's not a Kennedy disaster, really. That was a disaster.
That
for
is
other
a Kennedy
people,
disaster. The funeral train in Elizabeth, New Jersey, right? A lot of people came to watch the Bobby Kennedy funeral train go past, right? And a lot of people are trying to get good pictures of it. So when Bobby Kennedy's funeral train went through Elizabeth, New Jersey, it was coming in on track 2. So a lot of people got the bright idea we can go out on track 1. And start taking pictures of the train.
It's going to end exactly like you
think,
Alice.
Did. And they did, in fact, do that. And the thing is, another train came through on track 1 almost immediately after Bobby Kennedy's funeral train. Yeah.
That's not a Kennedy disaster,
3 or 4
man.
people.
That's hardly, giving her the old Kennedy,
no, that's
if you will.
more of another. That's that's another Kennedy causing a disaster for another person. Posthumously.
Gay Pigs was a good idea, and I'll stand by
that. But anyways, so let's continue on with our Caltrain adventures here.
Yeah, I'm biting my tongue.
One note about the Trainmasters is one of the problems with using submarine engines is that the U.S. Navy basically bought every Trainmaster as it was retired to repower their submarines. So I think there's only one of these left. It's in Canada. It's at Expo Rail, if I recall correctly.
We've been there.
So, that's correct.
Because Canada cannot be trusted with submarines.
Well, also the fact that exact museum, what is it, has Dominion of Canada they refuse to give back.
They refuse to even let it go to Britain for fear that someone will steal it. Yeah,
that's probably wise. We totally would do that.
They'll Elgin Marble that shit.
So here's actually one of the SD9s, known colloquially. There are only two SD9s that had steam generators, known as Huff and Puff, respectively. They were used for officers' specials and other things that didn't require quick acceleration. But here is an example of one being tested out on commute service. Anyhow, the 101, which is the highway, the spine of the peninsula, was completed in the mid-50s as sort of a hodgepodge re-engineering of El Camino Real, and has some really bad 1940s, 50s highway engineering because of it. But it got people into their cars, and ridership started to unsurprisingly decline. By 1977, Southern Pacific reported a $10 million annual loss for commute operations, and was definitely trying to petition for its cessation or abandonment. Inflation had also driven up operation costs, the 70s stagflation thing, 58%.
Jesus.
And combine that with the Arab oil crisis in 1973, obviously affecting diesel fuel. It was a real bad situation. And combine
clearly the only answer: nuclear-powered trains.
Yes.
Yes.
So
should have electrified.
Yeah. Well, that's another little side note we'll get into later. But anyhow, by August 1973. Only 7,300 people were riding the commute service a day.
Oh, wow.
And they petitioned the Public Utilities Commission to abandon ops, but the PUC was like, no, guys. Just no.
Those 7,500 people need their train service.
So here's where it gets interesting. So the SP, known as the octopus around the turn of the century, the all-powerful economic powerhouse that owned a lot of politicians throughout California history, they decided to nonchalantly pick up their rotary dial telephone and start calling around and pulling on some leashes and pulling on some loose threads. And eventually the state and the counties agreed that they would underwrite a $250 million bond to underwrite the debt and to improve the service. So that brings us to our next slide.
Before we leave the SP, just to say how much influence they had. Has anyone heard of the cell phone carrier Sprint?
Oh, God. No.
Did you know
Sprint? What is Sprint?
Sprint is an acronym.
Yep.
What it
stands for?
Railroad something telecom?
A Southern Pacific Railroad internal network telecommunications. Yes.
Oh,
damn.
Side note with Sprint, they were the first network in the entire world to lay fiber optic cable extensively around the state. And they had specific trains that they had built with the express purpose to bury fiber optic cable at a nice walking pace using these giant reels. There's some really cool pictures of it.
Nice.
Anyhow,
so also the transition WiMAX was going to be the 4G standard, so... Yeah, hit and miss.
So it turns into an interesting second transition era here. So Caltrans, which we've mentioned before, which is the State Department of Transportation, decided to work with the Southern Pacific on a 10-year lease structure. Caltrans specifically handled setting policies for passenger service, maintenance, performance standards, scheduling trains and fares. But Caltrans doesn't know how to run railroads, so they kept SP on hand for doing management and actually operating the trains with SP employees, trains, conductors, the whole deal. But here was the string that Caltrans said, knowing the SP was falling apart at the seams in the 1970s, they gave them a 90% on-time train performance mandate.
Yes.
So
fuck them.
Yeah, so that was, it seems unbelievable today, especially with Amtrak on performance time being somewhere in the 40 percentile,
Jesus.
So they wanted something truly exceptional. So 40.
The Northeast Corridor is fine. I just want to say that.
What did you say?
The Northeast Corridor is fine. It's much better than 40%.
Yes.
Everywhere else is probably like
long distance service in the West, though. It's good luck, you fuckers.
Oh god.
Oh yeah, it can get pretty egregious. I remember waiting for a California Zephyr on a platform last summer, and keep in mind that the Emeryville station is the first station out of the coach yard. I got there at about 10:30 and waited until 2. The train I eventually left. The train pulled into Emeryville, which is like 500 feet from the coach yard, at 9 p.m.
What the fuck?
Oh my god.
What? God.
Train
bad.
Okay.
Train bad. I've changed my mind.
Train bad.
I'm going to buy a Tesla with all my podcast money.
So
I get autopilot right into a truck. Yeah.
So let's go back to for a second here. So in 1973, you had 7,500 people riding the train a day, right? That was spread over 44 trains. Think about that. So
shit, I got a lot of space to spread out.
Yeah.
Liam, you're the math major.
166 people per train, which is
that's not
minuscule.
Which you could fit in
one car.
A single gallery car, yeah. Anyhow, 44 trains a day turned into 52 by day 1 of Caltrain operation. And by 1982, they started experimenting with push-pull service using the bi-level cars and cab cars and such. And then...
That's when the train stays the same direction, but there's an extra cab in the last passenger car so that, they can control the locomotive remotely. They can go either direction without turning the train around, right?
Yes. And also get tragically crushed in any head-on collision with other railway equipment.
Don't crash the train. That's easy. Don't do it.
So 1985 is when Caltrain starts looking like Caltrain. You had this weird, like, kind of SP, kind of not transition period. With this bizarre
the
GP
bloody nose, but with the stripes. It's weird.
No,
it wasn't.
This looks great. I love it. I love this livery.
Oh yeah.
I will defend this to the death. This looks great. I'm sorry.
Hey, I'm a train. I go vroom vroom.
Yes.
At any rate,
it
let's
does
go to
look
the
like a toy train. Yeah,
It does.
Yeah, not the best graphic design I've ever seen for anything Southern Pacific related, sadly. All right, so let's move on to the next slide, where we have, oddly, the reverse. You have
what
the
if
cars
austerity?
Yeah, oh god.
Yeah.
So you got the Pullman standard cars in the scheme that the GP9 was in, but now you have the fancy silver twin stripe Caltrain of the future. So 1985, the F40s roll on the situation, on the scene, and then it started perking up. Ridership increased, people started flocking back to it, and it was right around that time that technology, obviously Silicon Valley was about to bloom, the 90s. So slowly...
So what you're saying is massive government investment and nationalization is very good.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not going to dispute that. Why would I? We're on this podcast, aren't we?
Yes.
But yeah, it actually is a success in that respect. Ridership increased year over year for almost every year. More people started moving to the Bay Area because of tech jobs and military industrial complex related aerospace jobs. And the late 80s, 90s, and early aughts until the pets.com era. Yes, the first bubble showed steady ridership increases in service. Everything was peachy. Then there was a little bit of a dent with the pets.com bubble, but everybody got on their feet just to be knocked down again in 2008. Of course, ridership followed the economic crashes of waves until this year. The longest year in human existence.
Well, I mean, we had the plague at some point in the past, but
But I mean, that's the funny thing is listening to people being like, "Well, you have like a cell phone and access to the internet," and I'm like, "Yeah, guess what? It's a very human thing to still be so goddamn bored, man." Okay,
yes.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, like you can't stand in the face of progress, butt face, but like I sure can, and I'm annoyed by it.
Come on, you're not baking banana bread and learning Spanish and Portuguese at the
If I
same
have to
time.
see one more goddamn sourdough recipe, I am going to personally fly to Facebook headquarters and call and like bring Mark Zuckerberg in front of the global cabal of Jews and be like, "All right, listen, Mr. Soros, something must be done."
Look, the shit that you're supposed to do when you get bored in quarantine is start a podcast. We already did that, so we're out of ideas.
Yeah.
Ahead of the
Exactly.
game.
So we're going to learn Spanish, Portuguese.
I don't need to learn Portuguese.
Italian. What else? We're going to learn them all at the same
We'll learn
time. It's
Romansh.
called
We'll be
called
those
We're
Yes,
learning
Esperanto.
Portuguese from exposure to the sentence Jair Bolsonaro has tested positive for coronavirus.
Again.
The only positive news.
Literally, actually.
Exactly. So, in about the mid 2000s, Caltrain started experimenting with what was called the baby bullets, and the Southern Pacific commutes going.
Yeah, it's not a fucking name.
Spoiler alert! You want to guess which locomotive they used for the baby bullet?
Yeah.
Train masters.
Nope.
Oh.
No, they're the dildos.
Yeah.
Oh.
I don't like that combination
Yeah.
at all.
No, it's
I was about to
Jeffrey
say.
Epstein is so whatever
Major
he is.
investor in Caltrain, apparently.
Yeah.
So they started experimenting with baby bullets. We were just express limiteds, nothing fancy, but people lost their shit about it. It's like, oh my god, Caltrain's so amazing! Yay! I can't imagine anything better than these baby bullets. And like literally,
You
people
skipped
were
a stop.
losing it. It
Holy
was great.
shit.
Yeah. Foamers.
Considering that Southern Pacific had done this consistently in commute service until the late 60s, I'm not sure why they're so excited, but whatever. So that brings us to electrification, which is a cool thing and dates back to 1907. Edward Harriman wanted a fully electrified main line over the Sierras, kind of like what the Milwaukee Road did up north in Montana. That never came to pass, no pun intended. And they did a whole rundown of like how it would work, and they did a whole cost-benefit analysis. It turns out that in 1917, to electrify the entire peninsula commute corridor, you want to guess how much it would cost?
More money than existed in the world.
Nope.
$75.
You're actually close. You're actually close.
50 billion.
It was a paltry $1.5 million in
What the
1917.
Stuff was cheaper back then.
And that includes new locomotives and overhead wire.
Yep.
So, and then of course you have to adjust it for inflation. It's not as small as, it is today, but you get the idea.
The bulk of the cost was like haberdashery or something.
You have to provide like shiny silver buttons for all of the railroad cops' uniforms.
Precisely. So
yes.
So it got very interesting. They did the full study. They're looking, and they were just filling in what ended up being Bayshore Yard at the time. They were in the middle of completing that, and they were like, even though we bored these tunnels and laid these bridge abutments, like filling in even more of the bay is going to be super expensive, and I don't want to do it. So they're like, and they never.
They got all less of it exciting.
Oh yeah, it was like a spin-off of Clueless. It wasn't, anyways. So they never decided to four-track the main line despite building the infrastructure for it. They never electrified despite building infrastructure for it. And then they kind of tabled it. It came up again in the 40s, no dice. It came up again in the 70s briefly, no dice. And then Caltrain got the brainy idea relatively recently to do CalMod, which is this fantastic and honestly probably the best thing they'll ever do. Complete catenary EMU setup for Caltrain to completely electrify the entire main line.
But we don't need that now because we can just have a tunnel full of Teslas.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's too late for
obviously.
It's too late for you. Trains.
Mr. K, you had your chance.
Yeah.
You had your chance.
So we can actually take a fun look at history as an example of how this will probably go post-corona. in the North Bay, the Northwestern Pacific Third Rail electrified lines ran these hilariously rickety 1870s coaches. They literally stuffed trolley traction motors in. They were known as the Peanuts because of the whistle they had sounded like a peanut. It's very funny. They were.
How does something sound like a peanut?
It's. I could show you via the chat later. It's a very entertainingly small whistle. But anyways, so when the Great Depression happened in '29, they had bought all these. If you're a Pacific Electric fan, you'll know what blimps are. The large 72-foot riveted steel interurban coaches with the big round windows on the front.
They just ran them in the streets.
Yeah.
Yeah, fucking move, folks. You can move. You can move.
So before the Depression, they were running both the blimps and the old rickety Peanuts together. And once the Depression happened, they just retired all the Peanuts. They scrapped them. And that's probably what will happen here. We'll see a much shorter transition period from diesel to EMU, since we have the downtime to finish the electrification, at least to 4th and Townsend. And then basically diesels will disappear, and then they'll appear on Ozark Mountain Rail Car for surprisingly cheap, and then Metro will buy all of them.
I will buy them.
Yes.
I will buy them.
Yeah, we will
have
get
a
one.
podcast
Yes.
train. Yes. But here's the thing. Like, what is the advantage of electrification, right?
It's cool.
So yes, it's cool. It's number one. It's environmentally friendly. Number two, but we're talking about something much more important than that, which is it gets you to your job faster. So their current Caltrain modernization, the way they're going to do it is, and this is underway right now. It was underway before the Roni hit. Is they are buying these. This is a train set manufactured by a company called Statler in Switzerland, right?
Where's Waldorf?
And just use it on the Interregios in Europe too.
Yes,
Thanks the Lord, it's not a Bombardier product.
Oh.
Oh my God, yeah. It's called the Statler Kiss.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's a sequel to the Statler. This is genuinely no joke. This is a sequel to the Statler Flirt.
Yes.
Yes.
God damn.
Why they
Europeans.
do this?
God, I hate you.
Why did we buy a train from the European Institute of Sexual Harassment?
You know, it's like when you read about like JDM market cars that are called like the Honda like Big Jump Hug, and you're just like,
Yes.
well, you know, you're like, I'm sorry, like, don't name a train the Flirt. Like, please don't.
I love to ride the Express Hair Sniff.
They have a third sexually suggestive train model. I forget what it's called though.
The Statler Bumpin' Uglies. Call it the Statler Bumpin' Uglies. Do it.
Like, I think the one before the Flirt was called the Vert, which is not sexually suggestive to my knowledge
At all.
Little Uzi Vert. There you go.
All right. So the idea is this is a lightweight electrical multiple unit, right? So this is different from other electrical multiple units which have existed in the United States before because they all complied with the FRA buff strength test, which is basically like, you know, a sort of raw strength. You know, you need to be able to withstand an 800,000 pounds impact on each end, right?
It's a wink is the other one, which by the way is a fucking fucking acronym because the Swiss are deranged. Wandelbare innovative Nahverkehrskurzzeug.
Stop it. And give us back our gold too.
It's a convertible innovative short train for local transit.
It's extremely erotic.
They also have.
What is wrong with you, man?
They also have a tango, something called a spatz, and
Jesus Christ,
and a smile.
All right, we're gonna tap dance.
Yeah,
I don't like any of that, man. I don't like any of that.
No.
Yeah.
Right, so because we have a highly lightweight train, which is illegal in most of the United States, but legal here, you can have schedules which are faster because they accelerate more quickly. They stop more quickly. They can run more quickly on the same tracks. They make runs end to end more quickly. They have more doors than the gallery cars, which means you're not stopped at the station for the same amount of time. And this saves time on the commute, but it also means you need fewer trains to run the same schedule, or you can use the same number of crews to run more trains at no extra cost to you, right?
Right, because you're paying the guys anyway. The trains are already there. Camera crew is paid for.
Yeah, exactly. So the idea is once they electrify the system and run these trains, you're reducing headways from every 30 minutes to every 10 minutes, right?
Yeah, it's all sounding quite European, even down to the rolling stock.
This sounds classist to me. Slow trains are the mark of the proletariat, from what I understand.
Yes.
Yeah, you should only be able to have this service, like a train every 10 minutes, but the train is a Soviet diesel. It arrives belching black smoke over everything.
The movement of the proles. Yeah, I don't really understand with good train service is bourgeois. Carry on. I'm just baffled.
We'll talk about the Soviet high-speed train one of these days. The Moscow-St. Petersburg run was going as fast as the modern Northeast Corridor back in the 80s.
It beats fucking Aeroflot at that time. Jesus.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Well, you don't have to worry about falling out of the sky if you're on a train.
Just roll your ass out.
You do have to worry about Aeroflot landing on top of you, but it's fine.
Hey, guys.
Probably fine. So, yeah, this moves the system up the spectrum we discussed earlier, from like a regional rail to something that's a lot more like an S-Bahn or like the BART, which is just over the river and will soon make it all the way into San Jose. So you'll have like really good commuter, really good like rapid rail transit on both sides of the bay, right?
We can only hope.
The end result of this is that since you're increasing train service, increasing train performance, and you're using the trains and crews more efficiently, you're lowering the cost of running the trains per passenger, which means you could reduce fares. You can make this a more equitable train just by running more trains, right? You know, if you're running this sort of horrible, like economically exclusive commuter service, the solution is to just run more trains.
Train good after all.
Yes,
that's the argument you've made to me a couple times with regards to SEPTA too, because people do, like myself, bitch and moan about how much like a zone 1 fare costs to get out to somewhere like Manayunk, and it's just we could be running these every 10 minutes if we were serious, and we should be.
Yes.
One of the benefits of it as well is if anybody's been to Vancouver, BC, like their little underground service runs every 3 minutes, so you never have to worry about, oh no, am I going to miss a train? It doesn't matter. It's just there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's one of the most satisfying, low stress transit experiences I've ever had. It's like all you have to do is go downstairs in operating hours, and you're going to get a train.
Yeah,
that was my experience along with Roz with Toronto as well. Toronto, excuse me. Was that, you missed a train. Now the next one will be here in 5 minutes or less than that, whatever it was.
The Toronto subway is ridiculous. It's just how frequently it runs.
That's fantastic.
Andy Byford does good work when he's allowed to.
Andy Byford, come on the podcast.
Fuck you, Andrew Cuomo. Yeah, Andy Byford, come on the podcast. Talk about the New York City subway. Just curse out Andy Byford. We're here for it. Excuse me, Andrew Cuomo. Excuse me. Yeah. Oh my God. Anyway. But yes. So, it'd be a more equitable service if it ran more frequently as opposed to defunding it, which seems to be the way we're heading right now. Now, there are still problems, of course, which might be outside the purview of Caltrain that might result in their passengers being wealthier than average, chief among them being California housing policy.
Which painting is this, by the way? I was very curious.
Liam, you put this in the chat.
It's the Harrowing of Hell by von Swanenberg, who I believe was he taught young Rembrandt.
Really?
Yes.
I see.
Very good.
Yes. All right. So the thing about California housing policy, I'll try and get this done as quickly as possible, right? Everyone with an opinion on California housing policy is wrong.
Yep.
Right?
Yes. Don't come for us, numbtots. I don't want to fucking hear it.
The YIMBYs are wrong. The NIMBYs are wrong. The DSA is wrong. The Democrats are wrong. The Republicans are wrong. The local advocacy groups are wrong. The state advocacy groups are wrong. The developers are wrong. The landlords are wrong. Everyone on Twitter is wrong. I am wrong, and you are wrong.
Agreed.
A subject about which it is impossible to be correct.
Yes.
Yes. Now, if you want my opinion,
Oh boy.
it's that there's a dialectic at work here, which is that there are two ways for landlords to make money, right? Let's start out with this as an axiom. The first way is to build and rent or sell more housing. And the second way is to not build or rent or sell more housing and also make sure no one else does. And then raise the rent on what you already got, right?
Yes.
Both of these are very viable ways to make money, but the second one has a higher return on investment, right? So, if you're in most cities have a few high profile developers who are like, yeah, we're going to build really big apartment buildings, blah, blah, blah. And then there's an army of small landlords and homeowners who are entirely opposed to new housing. At least the ones who are like, yeah, I need to make sure my investment goes up in value, right? And these tensions have resolved themselves in different ways in different locations. But in California, the army of small landlords and homeowners has won out almost everywhere.
Yeah.
So, it's all incredibly restrictive zoning everywhere. Everyone has to live in a single family house, which is one story. There's almost no apartment buildings or anything like that. Your property taxes are locked in at 1976 levels.
Thank you, Prop 13.
Proposition.
Yeah, because of proposition system. It's been fucked. It's been fucked since the days of well before Southern Pacific, but even when it was like orange groves getting turned into tract housing, it's still fucked now. I don't know if it can ever get better aside from fully parody in Minecraft.
There have been movements to repeal Prop 13, and you can see where that went.
Oh yeah.
I was about to say, but the result of this is that every California homeowner is now a kulak.
Oh,
right?
Well, we're cancelled.
Hey, Dad, how's it going? I don't know you were on the podcast.
So, I know, I'm usually kind of sympathetic to home ownership because renting sucks. But if you own a home in California, in a desirable area, you own I don't know, a 1945 Craftsman on a small lot, and it's $3.5 million.
Oh, yeah. You have a vested interest in maintaining that wild overvalue. So obviously you're going to keep your property taxes low. You don't want any new development because that'll dilute your exactly. So
it gets even worse when you have speculation from out of state, out of country buying up these cute little bungalows for sight unseen. There's a real estate office down the street that proudly has these little printouts in the window that says 57% over asking, 47% over asking. And the asking price was already $1.2 million for a house.
Because of artificial scarcity, you've got, exactly.
But it's on a 50 by 100 lot. You're up each other's asses and you're paying almost $2 million for this little house. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's study I just build some row houses or some shit.
Right.
Come on, your 1945 bungalow is not that special.
It's fine.
You can sell it, and you could build some denser housing here. Come on, this is but yeah. So because of Proposition 13, property taxes basically do not go up. So there's no reason for you to ever sell your house. It's really easy to pass down your house to your kids without any sort of tax penalty at all. Your home's value will go up forever, and you will never be taxed proportionally for that, right? I did a caveat here. I used to think this is the most absurd taxation policy in the world, and then I heard Alice on the last Hell of a Way to Die bonus episode, and with Alice and Milo talking about the council tax, and I was like, well,
yeah,
that's worse. Actually, that's worse.
Taxes somehow still worse.
We literally fought you over a war with you over this. See?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So we've done slightly better than that.
Slow down. Slow down.
Yeah, slightly better. So places like Menlo Park, Palo Alto, Redwood City, they're very desirable, wealthy communities with no constituency to advocate for denser housing or zoning or public housing. And, this dialectic of, a good way to raise housing prices is to either build housing or not build housing. I think the way to do it would be to build public housing to achieve a sort of positive synthesis, right?
Yeah, that's crazy. You can't do that.
The Bay Area is such an absurd edge case that, maybe you could just loosen zoning. Maybe you should just do that. Maybe you should let some people build some apartment blocks on these dumb parking lots next to the train stations,
Thankfully, there has been some really good progress in that. BART specifically has made this amazing program to develop all of its parking lots, and they're big parking lots spread all around each station, into affordable housing. And they've been doing a bang up job. Like all of the new development in and around MacArthur BART station in downtown Oakland, we went from a disused parking lot that often had more broken glass on it than anything else to, I think, something like a 40-story tower and a couple of other auxiliary, maybe 27-story. I don't know how. Yeah, 27 stories. Nice. And a bunch of other lower rise affordable housing buildings. And they did this amazing permitting thing where there's like literally a deadline before like past this deadline, we can't ever do it again. And BART was like, okay, let me fill out all of these forms to get all of these approved. And so
love it.
And so they're building on top of all of their stations that are underground that they can. They're building in all of the parking lots along all of the major stations, with few exceptions, of course. And it's all coming together. All the buildings are getting built nicely. They look good, for as good as contemporary architecture can be. They're tasteful. And yeah, it's working well. There's more of that happening along Caltrain too. They're flipping some of the parking lots, some of which were privately owned, some of which were state or county owned, and they're putting condos and apartments on top of them with a slant towards affordable housing. But, affordable housing in the Bay Area, let's be real here, is like $3,000 a month for an apartment. So, yeah.
Yep.
And of course, there are ones tied to income and other things for like truly low income people. But yeah, when quote unquote low income housing is in $2,000 to $3,000 a month range, like, oh my God.
Didn't they make a big stink in Berkeley about like a parking lot being redeveloped too?
Oh yeah, there's the North Berkeley BART. They lost their shit about because it's a 1940s era suburb and with a giant parking lot the size of a city block with the station like tiny in the center of it. And they were like
a 700-story building on there. Just
fucking just do Red Vienna.
Just do the Burj Khalifa.
700 stories of public housing right there.
I personally,
neighbors.
In Presidio Bay, I'm going to build that parking lot, and then I'm going to put the launch Arcology from SimCity 2000 on top of it.
Yes.
So yeah, they've raised a stink. I think they were getting grumpy about even like a 4-story building or something that was going to be mixed use with community space and the whole like Berkeley checklist of things that you would love. Like granola dispensers and hemp bathroom towels and the whole deal. But yeah, they kept shooting it down because, of course, they want to preserve the fabric of their 1940s neighborhood and, blah, 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 the classic.
I live in an 1890s neighborhood and I would be fine with that shit.
Yeah.
I'll take the damn hemp toweled granola dispenser.
And here's the funny thing. On the other side of Berkeley, near Ashby BART, they got all approved, no questions asked, beautiful development that they're going to start building in a year or two. A very much needed place for density. Yeah, so like the difference between North Berkeley and South Berkeley seems to be pretty marked in that even.
Moral of the story, just build the damn housing. All right, we're canceled by all the San Francisco Bay Area DSAs now. Anyway, so your Craftsman Bungalow neighborhood is not special. It all came out of the damn Sears catalog.
Yes.
It became that out of an orange grove due to a series of like corrupt land and water deals.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of private investigators buried under all of the foundations.
Definitely. Side note, there is a fantastic silent film by Buster Keaton called 2 Weeks, in which he attempts to build one of the Sears catalog homes. Please, I implore you to go watch it. It's on YouTube.
Oh, that sounds good. I'll put a link to that in the description. So anyway, I guess to sort of conclude this, the end result of this discussion we have is, it's kind of goofy to defund Caltrain when, they have the problems of Commuter Rail, regional rail, but they're the agency which is working the most and has the best idea to address so many of these economic inequality issues. It's weird to defund them right now in the name of more equitable transit funding or whatever.
Misplaced priorities.
Yeah. And anyone who's riding Caltrain right now in the middle of a pandemic is someone who doesn't have any other option. Right. Let's get real.
Essential worker.
And I think if you're looking at certainly Bay Area projects that ought to be defunded, maybe we shouldn't be spending money on this. Maybe you got to look at some of the capital projects which have gone on recently. So what we're looking at here is a cross-section of the Trans-Bay Transit Center, right? So this replaced the Trans-Bay Terminal.
A beautiful 1940-era terminal for the Key System and Interurban Electric trains that used to go across the Bay Bridge on the lower deck.
Yeah, I remember from the best train simulator route, the Sacramento Northern.
Oh, I still need to download that. Ugh. But yes, it replaced this. As a person who lived through this entire transition period, we all honestly thought they were just going to tear down the Trans-Bay Transit Center and never replace it with anything.
I mean, it was a good-looking building, and what they replace it with is not a good-looking building.
It's a block. It had a beautiful roof, though. I must admit, not a huge fan of the major structure, but the roof park is fantastic.
Well, I've never been there, so I will reserve full judgment until one day I am able to leave my house and go to San Francisco. But yeah, so this is a cross section of the Trans-Bay Transit Center. The old Key System terminal was this area up here, which is now a bus terminal, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Which was perfectly serviceable before they built this. The idea was they were going to build a new terminal which would service the buses more efficiently because they converted the interurban into a bus system, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they would also build a big hole in the ground where they would have high-speed trains and also Caltrain, right? So one of the things they did when they built this station is they forgot to build the tunnel that would bring the trains into the box underground.
Yep.
Oops.
Yeah.
You don't have your trains hook up.
Yeah, and one of the biggest snafus of any of the projects in the Bay Area in time immemorial. There's a long S-curve that's supposed to connect the 4th and Townsend Caltrain terminal and duck underneath south of Market to connect with the train box, which is downtown, many blocks away. And they demolished the original Trans-Bay terminal, dug the hole, put the train box in, built the station, and have not started at all on the tunnel that would connect any of the rail service with the rest of the network.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
This whole station, right, today serves the same purpose as the bus station that was there before. It took 8 years to build.
Yep.
It cost $2 billion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it now serves the same function as it did before, while looking different. And,
and constantly having issues with its structural stability and roadway having issues and closing constantly and reopening constantly. It's been a bad teething process, sadly.
And there's this whole box for trains that's never been used. There was no reason to build this thing, right? I mean, but the other thing is the whole Caltrain electrification modernization project for 60 miles of track or so cost less than this one station.
Correct.
Christ.
And they're quadrupling service with that amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
These huge vanity projects dominate transit funding in America today. Like, there's no emphasis on like, well, what if we spent this money to increase service? It's like, no, we're going to build like a really fancy station, and then I'm going to be able to stand in front of it and cut the ribbon, and all my contractor friends are going to be able to, you know, profit off the grift. There's no money into like just, I don't know, running more trains.
Once again, like as with nuclear reactors, we're back to the best thing is very boring and unsexy.
Yeah, standardized.
No matter how much you try to call the train the sex liker or whatever,
goddamn sweat.
It's not sexy. Yeah.
No, it's exactly right. We talk about, you know, and that's one of the things I think, especially for those of us, I know all four of us here, and obviously most people listening who are into transit and sort of infrastructure, that's so goddamn frustrating, especially the media coverage, these sort of pie in the sky nonsense projects that'll never fucking work, the media attention they receive when it's like, well, you know, why do we still have to use the fucking Hellgate Bridge or Hellgate Port? Like shit like that. Why is the link into New York still not done? It's just basic shit like that. And then you have people who are like, gadget bonds and Elon Musk. And it's like, no, still no. You have to like be very basic about how people get places, and you don't need to make it more complicated.
You have a shitload of infrastructure you could run a shitload more trains on without doing very much effort. You know, instead of like, I don't know, I'm gonna rebuild 1 million miles of I'm gonna rebuild a station. That's the real issue. Is like, I'm gonna build a bigger station, right? And it's gonna be a better passenger experience because the station, I don't know, has more natural light. This does not apply
to it's like New York Penn, which should absolutely be rebuilt.
This does apply to New York Penn. New York Penn could be greatly improved by operational changes without moving, like without putting a single shovel in the ground. I'm
glass pane by glass pane, statue by statue.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, there is one advantage of the new Transbay terminal. It has more shopping, TM.
Everything doesn't have to be a fucking mall.
The thing below, see the thing above the train box there? That's supposed to be a shopping mall, I kid you not.
And is it?
No. It's just like the actual Transbay terminal that preceded it.
They fucking ruined Washington Union Station like that too. Or whatever.
Washington Union Station at least has a mall that exists.
Yeah, and there's a Pizzeria Uno there.
Wow, I haven't heard about those in a long time.
I really like Pizzeria Uno. That's like one flaw as a person.
I'm a huge fan of Chicago pizza too. That's another story.
Pass.
There is an interesting story about the original Transbay terminal and shopping, oddly. They also had a shopping concourse in the original Transbay terminal, which closed with the end of interurban electric service in 1958. But instead of gutting it, they literally just put a padlock on it and closed it off, and then hid it behind a wall. And the week before the demolition, they opened that door, and for one single night, they had people run around taking pictures and salvaging everything that had basically been left in place since 1958. It was like a Fallout expansion pack. It was incredible. There's photographs of it online.
The last American Orange Julius.
Yes, exactly. That kind of shit.
Well, now there's a ton of them. The last Orange Julius is no longer the last Orange Julius. And I'm honestly kind of frustrated by that, because I went all the way to goddamn Toronto for it. And now they're just all over the place.
I blame Stranger Things.
Well,
yes.
We will all wind up in the Eaton Center one day in our lives.
That's a hell of a place, man.
Everyone winds up in the Eaton Center. Anyway, so yeah, a lot of public transit funding winds up in these vanity projects as opposed to actually improving operations that help people, as opposed to, you know, having the same operations that happen in a flashier station, right? Which is just dumb, extremely dumb.
Love to be in the trains box.
Yes.
Yes.
Right in the train box.
Said Miles put a whole bunch of notes here, which I don't know what they are, about the joint powers boards and stuff like that, because it's confusing to me.
It's confusing to everybody. I feel like it's the bureaucratic version of the California housing problem. Everybody is wrong, and they basically what what it boils down to in the most succinct way is that there's a lot of different organizations that operate the trains and the infrastructure and the bridges and all of the buses and every transit piece of the pie in the Bay Area, right? But annoyingly, they're all a different joint powers board. So they're all this weird melange of different people and interests, and they constantly rub knuckles with each other. And, they create these unbelievably crazy budgets of which, some of it obviously ends up in the pockets of various individuals, I'm sure. I can neither confirm nor deny that for legal reasons, but you get the idea. And it's just this mess. A lot of people have been calling for the BART board to buy Caltrain. And it is a fascinating idea, and frankly, it should be explored. I'm not for or against it at the moment, because clearly we need to do a little bit more research to figure out if that would actually be an effective solution. But suffice to say, it is a very infuriating process to do anything transit-related in the Bay, because you have to deal with overlapping joint powers boards rubbing knuckles with each other.
Well, I think if we learned anything from here, it's that, these issues are more complex than, like, I don't know, if we got to defund Caltrain because rich people use it. It's very, very disingenuous. Like, it is true that rich people use it, but also, like, this is a complex issue, and, like, this is the only commuter rail regional rail agency which is taking concrete steps to address those problems. Also, I like the RTS buses here in the render here.
Yeah, very nice.
I just want to point those out. Anyway, so I guess that is the episode. Next episode's about the Tacoma Narrows Bridge disaster.
I don't see myself on this slide, which is good. We're doing that joke for one episode only.
No, it was Mothman. It was Mothman.
I'll put it in like 7 episodes from now. No one will notice.
This has been great. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Miles.
Oh, our pleasure.
Oh, no problem. Yeah. Miles, do you want to talk about Presidio Bay?
Sure.
It's so good.
At all?
Thank you. Yeah. Presidio Bay has been a project that I've been working on for about 2.5 to 3 years with my buddy Jay. And it is a city skylines building series unlike any other. It goes through time, not unlike Franklin, but also incorporates drastic changes that undergo the entire history of the region of the Bay Area. So it's not just San Francisco, it's Oakland, Sausalito, Gilroy, San Jose. And you see how over a century or more, how the entire Bay Area gets knitted together. And it's exhaustively researched.
And the premiere of the first episode was today, as of the day we're recording. So go. It's on Jay's channel, Bisquickelhausen. I'll put that down in the description because no one knows how to spell that. Right? I don't know how to spell it. I've known him for ages. I don't know how to spell it.
And depending on how late this podcast comes out, the next episode will be on my channel, Interurban Era, in the next couple of weeks.
All right. Sounds good. I also have a commercial. So this episode should be coming out as quickly as possible. So I am going to be doing a live stream with organizers for Jess Skarain for Senate, right? Jess Skarain is doing a primary challenge against Chris Coons, senator from Delaware, one of the most conservative Democrats in the Senate. Let's get some more left-wing people in, right? So on July 25th, that's Saturday, my portion of the live stream will start. This is a 24-hour live stream. I'm only on for 2 hours, and we are going to do a build of miniature Delaware. And there will be many interesting Delaware facts.
Are you going to include the one building that has all the companies
1209 Orange, Alice? Yes. Pay it some respect.
Thank you. Yes.
So I'll put the details in the description. This should be out probably the day before it happens. So, also, the bonus episode's coming out soon. I'm just having difficulty editing towards the end of the episode because the episode is about beer and we all drank a lot of beers.
That's right.
The next bonus episode, I'm responsible for it. It'll get there.
We all have problems.
I have to move it. I gotta do all sorts of shit, man. All right. Are you my dad? Are you my fucking dad? No, you're not.
Get out of the tank.
Just like screaming, maintain your decorum at me, seemingly for no reason.
Oh my God. All right. Miles, thanks for coming on.
Thanks.
Sorry we kept you
It's
a
been
long
fun.
time.
All right.
All right. I think we're done with the podcast.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Have fun, guys.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.